Hello everyone, it's Father Hayes. A couple days ago, Bishop Burbidge released a teaching document addressing the issue of the transgender ideology that's very much in the news today. So what I wanted to do is just go through a couple of the theological points that he's basing this document on. I'm not going to go through the entire document. The document is available at the diocesan website, so I certainly encourage everyone to print out their own copy. It's only 8 pages, and to read it through. But I wanted to just touch on a few of the theological points that the bishop is making in this document, because it deals with our understanding of the human person and human relationships. So first, to begin, the bishop in the document identifies, we have to identify our terms and define our terms. So he gives the following 2 definitions, one for the transgender ideology and one for gender dysphoria. So in the document, the bishop says the transgender ideology, what we mean by that is the claim that a person's biological sex and personal identity have no necessary connection. And in fact, that a person's biological sex and personal identity could in fact contradict each other. So that's the claim of the transgender ideology. The gender dysphoria is defined as a psychological condition in which a biological male or female comes to feel that his or her emotional and or psychological identity does not match his or her biological sex. And as a result, they experience clinically significant distress. All right, so those are the 2 definitions that the bishop has provided in this document. And so the theological points that he's making, and again, I'm not going to go through the entire document, I just want to touch on these theological points that he's making, are addressing and responding to these claims and these issues. So he says, the teaching of the Catholic Church on this issue and on the issue of the human person rests on 3 principles, and all of these principles are knowable by way of human reason. In other words, you don't need to be a theologian to understand these points. Everyone can understand it if they're properly presented to them. So the first principle is that the human person is an embodied soul, the composite of the spiritual and the physical. So in other words, we're not spirits trapped in bodies. Right? So this principle goes on to say that the human soul is created to animate one particular body. So we each have our own individual soul, and that soul serves to animate the body. But there's a unity between the body and the soul. To be a human person means to be a unity of body and soul from the moment of conception. So just to touch on this point for a second, a good spiritual reflection to go through is to recognize that none of us have the ability to create ourselves. God had to think about every single human person and will them into existence as an individual. And to follow on that, none of us have the ability to hold ourselves in existence. So that means that God has to be thinking about every single person, every single solitary second of their existence, and willing them to exist, or else we just cease to exist. So really what that means then is we are created by God for a purpose. And God knows who we are. We're not lost in the crowd. And God is thinking about us and aware of us literally every single solitary second that we exist. So to go back to this first principle, then, that the human person is a unity of body and soul. We're not souls trapped in bodies. We're a unity of body and soul from the moment of our conception. And that therefore the body has a purpose. It reveals not only the soul, but it reveals the person. Right? My body reveals who I am as a person. And the person, as a unity of body and soul, acts through the body. Thus, each person's body, which is given by God from the moment of conception, is neither foreign nor a burden, but is an integral part to the person. So that's the first principle that the church bases her teaching of the human person on. Second, and this is citing the authoritative witness of Scripture, that the church teaches that the human person is created male and female. Therefore, the human soul is created to animate and be embodied by one particular, specifically male or female body. Now, what I'm reading here is everything straight from the document, so I'm doing a little bit of ad-libs to highlight a point, but the main points that I'm reading coming straight from the bishop's words. A person's sex is immutable, meaning it's unchanging and also unable to be changed. It's an immutable biological reality, again, determined at conception. In other words, God, when he willed a person into existence, determined in his plan for that person to be male or female. So therefore, the body as male or female is revealing God's design, not only for that individual person, but also for all human beings, by establishing us in a relationship with other beings. So another way to say this is, we are created for relationship. That's the purpose of our existence, to be in relationship, because the one who has created us is relationship, is the origin and perfection of relationship. So that's the second principle. The third principle is that the differences between men and women are ordered. In other words, they have a purpose, they're not accidental. They are ordered toward their complementary union in marriage. The differences between man and woman, male and female, are actually unintelligible apart from this union. So the third principle is basically that these differences between male and female are ordered to a complementary relationship, a union. Now, why is this? What are these three principles building on? And this is the next section of the document, our transcendent purpose. So these truths about the human person, which again are accessible by natural reason. You don't have to be a theologian to understand these. These truths attain an extraordinary dignity and calling in the Christian view of the world. Now, this is an important sentence that the bishop puts in there, because it identifies too that there is a worldview that is informed by revelation, informed by the teaching of the church. So we as Catholic Christians are called to have that view of the world. But we have to also recognize that worldview is in conflict with another worldview. And that's where a lot of these debates and these discussions are arising from. The body is not a limitation or a confinement. In other words, again, we are not souls trapped in a body. Rather, the body is one with the soul in the life of grace and glory to which the human person is called. Likewise, the relationship between man and woman as masculine and female has transcendent significance. It means a reality beyond the natural order that we see around us. This relationship between male and female is pointing us to a greater invisible reality. And that goes back to what I said a moment ago. We're created for relationship. That's the purpose of our existence, because the church proclaims to the world, the one who created us, the one who willed us into existence, the one who holds us in existence, is the perfection and origin of relationship. And so our being in relationship as male and female is pointing us to that reality. And then furthermore, because of God's plan for us, we are actually created to be participants in that perfect relationship of divine persons. And so our complementary nature as male and female is not only imaging that reality, but along with grace is preparing us for that reality in the next life. So the final point I want to touch on from the document is the bishop touching on our wounded human nature. So he says, unfortunately, we do not experience our human nature as the original harmony intended by the Creator, where everything was in this perfect union and this perfect harmony. Rather, we recognize and we proclaim to the world that our human nature is fallen and wounded. One of the legacies of original sin is this disharmony and alienation. So in other words, the disharmony that people are feeling even within themselves is not because they were somehow made imperfectly, but rather that original harmony of the original creation has been wounded by original sin. But we also and the Church recognizes that everyone experiences this disharmony in some way or another. Nevertheless, this disharmony does not negate the profound oneness of the human person's body and soul. In other words, this wound to our nature does not negate the fact that we are a union of body and soul, and we are created to be in relationship and to be an icon pointing to this greater relationship. This restoration of this original harmony that we enjoyed, our first parents enjoyed at creation, has begun with the redemption brought about by Christ and the order of grace that we live in. So God has given us the gift of the sacramental life to give us access to his grace. Sacraments are not simply symbols, but they are realities that connect us to a deeper invisible reality, which is God's grace. And that at the last day, at the resurrection of the body on the last day, this original harmony will come back to its fulfillment, where we will not only have that harmony, but we will have glorified bodies entering into and participating in the divine nature. So I encourage everyone to go to the diocesan website and to print out the document and read it. Again, it's only 8 pages. It's not an onerous read, a heavy read, but it's an important read. It's important for us to understand what the Church teaches and why she teaches it. Furthermore, I'd encourage you all to pray. First of all, pray for our bishop in gratitude for his leadership, being the shepherd that he has been called to be to guide the flock of Arlington. But also to pray for all those who struggle in one way or another with this issue and with this disharmony that we all feel through the wound of original sin. May God be with you.